The massive warship moved through the darkness of space like a silent predator. Its hull was made of a metal that seemed to absorb light, and its shape was unlike anything humans had ever built. This was the flagship of the Valenthorian Empire, and deep within its walls, a single human prisoner waited in chains. Commander Daniel Hayes had been captured 6 hours ago. His squad of 12 Marines had been ambushed during a routine patrol near the border territories. The Valenthorians had come out of nowhere, their ships appearing from behind a moon where they had been hiding. The battle was short and brutal. Daniel watched his friends die one by one as plasma fire tore through their formation. He had fought back with everything he had. His rifle had run out of ammunition, so he used his combat knife. When that broke inside a Valenthorian soldier, he used his fists. By the time they finally brought him down with a stun blast, 17 enemy warriors lay dead around him. Now he knelt on the cold floor of a throne room that was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. His combat suit was damaged but still functional. The helmet covered his face completely, hiding his features behind a dark visor. His hands were locked in magnetic cuffs that hummed with energy. The throne room was filled with Valenthorian nobles and guards. They stood in small groups, whispering to each other and pointing at the human prisoner. Daniel could not understand their language, but he could guess what they were saying. They were talking about the strange creature that had killed so many of their warriors before being captured. At the far end of the room, sitting on a throne made of blue crystal, was Princess Kira of the Valenthorian Empire. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in the soft light. Her eyes were large and purple, and they studied Daniel with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. Her hair was white and fell past her shoulders like flowing water. She was beautiful in an alien way, but there was coldness in her expression that made Daniel think of a snake watching a mouse. The princess raised one hand, and the room fell silent immediately. Every Valenthorian stopped talking and turned to face their ruler. Daniel remained still, watching through his visor as she rose from her throne and began to walk toward him. Her movements were graceful, almost like she was floating rather than walking. Her long blue robes trailed behind her on the polished floor. As she got closer, Daniel could see that her skin was not just silver, but covered in tiny patterns that seemed to shift and change as she moved. She stopped about 10 feet away from him and tilted her head to one side. When she spoke, her voice was translated by a device somewhere in the room. The words came out in English, but they carried an echo of her original language beneath them. "So this is a human," she said. "I have heard many stories about your kind. They say you are weak creatures who cannot survive without your metal shells. They say your planet is a dangerous place that should have killed your species long ago. And yet, here you are, having slaughtered 17 of my soldiers before we could capture you." Daniel said nothing. He had been trained to resist interrogation, and silence was his first weapon. The princess smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am Princess Kira of the third house of Valanther. You are on my ship, in my throne room, and you will answer when I speak to you." Still, Daniel remained silent. He kept his breathing steady and his body relaxed. Panic was the enemy. Fear was the enemy. As long as he stayed calm, he could survive. Kira's purple eyes narrowed. She was not used to being ignored. In her 300 years of life, every creature she had ever spoken to had shown her proper respect. They had bowed, trembled, or begged for mercy. This human did none of those things. He simply knelt there like a statue, his face hidden behind that dark visor. "My advisors have told me many things about humans," she continued, circling around him slowly. "They say your species is young, barely a few thousand years old as a civilization. They say you only discovered space travel in the last 2 centuries. They say your bodies are soft and fragile, easily damaged, slow to heal." She stopped in front of him again and leaned down slightly. They say you cannot survive in the vacuum of space, that you cannot breathe underwater, that extreme temperatures can kill you in minutes. They say you need food and water every single day, or you will die. They say you sleep for 1/3 of your lives, because your bodies are too weak to stay awake. Daniel almost laughed at that. Almost, but he kept his composure. And yet, Kira said softly, you killed 17 of my finest warriors. Soldiers who have trained for decades. Soldiers who have fought in dozens of battles. Soldiers whose bodies can heal any wound within hours. She paused. How did you do it? This time, Daniel spoke. His voice came through his helmet speaker, calm and steady. They made a mistake. One mistake. They thought I would give up. The throne room was so quiet that Daniel could hear his own heartbeat inside his helmet. The Valenthorians stared at him with expressions ranging from anger to confusion. This tiny creature, this fragile human, was speaking to their princess like an equal. Kira straightened up and looked at him for a long moment. Then she made a gesture to her guards. I want to see what we have captured. Remove the helmet. 2 guards stepped forward with weapons that looked like spears made of light. Daniel did not move as they approached. He had been expecting this moment since his capture. Your Highness, he said quietly, I do not think you want to do that. Kira raised one eyebrow. Are you threatening me, human? No, I am warning you. What you see might change how you think about my species. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The princess laughed. It was a cold sound that echoed through the throne room. You think I will be afraid of what is under that helmet? I have seen creatures from 1,000 worlds. I have watched stars die and planets burn. Nothing about you can frighten me. She nodded to her guards. Remove his suit. All of it. I want to see exactly what kind of creature thinks it can challenge the Valenthorian Empire. The guards grabbed Daniel's arms and forced him to his feet. Technicians came forward with tools that glowed with energy. They began cutting through the seals of his armor, working carefully but quickly. Daniel did not resist. There was no point. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and far from any hope of rescue. All he could do was wait and see what happened next. As the first pieces of his armor fell away, he thought about his home. He thought about the small town in Colorado where he had grown up. He thought about his mother, who had died when he was 12, and his father, who had raised him alone. He thought about the day he had joined the Marines, young and full of hope and stupid dreams about seeing the stars. He had seen the stars. He had seen more than he ever wanted to see. And now he was about to show an alien princess what the stars had done to him. The chest plate came off, and the room went silent. Princess Kira took a step backward, her purple eyes wide with shock, and Daniel Hayes, scarred and broken and still standing, looked at her without fear. You wanted to see a human, he said. Now you see one. Princess Kira could not move. She stood frozen in the middle of her own throne room, staring at the human body before her. In 300 years of life, she had seen many things. She had witnessed battles, executions, and the deaths of entire worlds. But she had never seen anything like this. The human's chest was a landscape of destruction. A massive scar ran from his left shoulder down to his right hip, cutting across his entire torso. The skin around it was raised and twisted, pink and white against the darker tone of his natural flesh. It looked like someone had tried to cut him in half and nearly succeeded, but that was not the only mark. Burn scars covered his right side. The skin melted and reformed into strange patterns. There were circular scars that looked like holes, puncture wounds that had healed but left their memory behind. Lines crossed his stomach and ribs, some thin and some thick, each one telling a different story of violence. The technicians continued their work, removing more pieces of armor. Each new section of exposed skin revealed more damage. His arms were covered in scars from wrist to shoulder. His back, when they turned him around, was even worse than his front. Old wounds layered on top of older wounds, a history of pain written on his body. The guards who were holding Daniel had loosened their grip without realizing it. They were staring at him with the same shock as everyone else in the room. Among the Velanthorians, such injuries simply did not exist. Their bodies healed perfectly within hours of any damage. The idea that someone could carry wounds for years, for a lifetime, was something they had never truly understood. One of the nobles in the crowd made a sound of disgust. "It is deformed," he said loudly. "The creature is diseased. We should kill it before it spreads its sickness to us." Daniel turned his head toward the speaker. His face was still hidden behind his helmet, but something in his posture made the noble take a step back. "I am not diseased," Daniel said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "And I am not deformed. This is what a human looks like after 22 years of military service." Princess Kira finally found her voice. "How is this possible?" she asked. "How can you have so many wounds and still be alive? Any one of these injuries should have killed you." "Some of them almost did," Daniel admitted. "The big one across my chest came from a plasma blade during the colony defense on Kepler 442b. The enemy commander caught me from behind, cut through my armor like it was paper. I should have died, but my sergeant put 3 rounds in his head before he could finish the job. Medics patched me up on the field. Spent 4 months in a hospital learning to walk again." He pointed with his bound hands at the burn marks on his side. "This was from a reactor explosion on a mining platform. I had to carry 2 wounded Marines through the fire to reach the evacuation shuttle. My suit's cooling system failed about halfway through. Felt my skin melting inside the armor, but I did not stop. Could not stop. My friends needed me." Kira looked at the burn scars more closely. The skin was rough and discolored, covering nearly a quarter of his torso. The pain must have been unimaginable. The fact that he had kept moving, kept fighting, while his body burned was something she could not comprehend. "Remove the helmet," she ordered quietly. The technicians obeyed. The seals hissed as they disconnected, and the helmet lifted away from Daniel's head. His face matched his body. A scar ran across his left cheek, starting below his eye and ending at his jaw. His nose had been broken at least twice and healed slightly crooked. There was a small mark above his right eyebrow and another one on his chin. His brown hair was cut short, military style, and his green eyes looked out at the room with no fear at all. He was not handsome by any standard, human or alien. But there was something in his face that made Kira feel strange. Something that looked like strength, or maybe stubbornness, or maybe just a refusal to accept defeat. "You carry your wounds," she said slowly, trying to understand. "You do not heal them." "We heal," Daniel replied. "But not like you. Our bodies close the wounds and stop the bleeding, but the scars remain. Humans call it a flaw. I call it a feature. Why would you want to remember pain? Why would you choose to carry these marks forever?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Because every scar is a lesson. Every wound teaches us something. If we forgot our injuries, we would forget what caused them. We would make the same mistakes again and again. Our scars make us wiser." He looked directly at the princess, meeting her purple eyes with his green ones. "That scar on my chest teaches me to never turn my back on an enemy. The burns remind me that there is no limit to what I will do for my friends. The broken nose tells me that I should have ducked faster in a bar fight when I was 19. A few of the guards made sounds that might have been laughter. Kira silenced them with a look. "There is more," Daniel continued. "Our scars connect us to the people we have lost. Some of my wounds came from battles where my friends died. When I look at those scars, I remember them. I remember their faces, their voices, their last words. As long as I carry these marks, they are not truly gone. Kira felt something shift inside her. She had expected to find weakness under the armor. She had expected a soft, fragile creature that would beg for mercy. Instead, she had found something she could not name. This human was damaged, yes, broken in ways that her people would consider unacceptable. But he was not weak. He was something else entirely. "Your people," she said, "are they all like you?" "Some are worse," Daniel said. "Some have lost arms, legs, eyes. Some have injuries inside their heads that never heal, memories of terrible things they cannot forget. We call it trauma. It stays with us forever, shaping who we are." "And you continue to fight? Even with all this damage?" Daniel almost smiled. "Your Highness, humans have been fighting since before we learned to write. We fight each other, we fight nature, we fight disease and hunger and time itself. Every generation faces new enemies, and every generation finds a way to survive. This body you see is not broken. It is experienced." The princess turned to her advisors, who were watching the exchange with wide eyes. The head advisor, an old Valentorian named Thren, stepped forward nervously. "Your Highness," he said, "this is clearly a damaged specimen. We should not draw conclusions about the entire species based on one prisoner." "Actually," Daniel said, "I am pretty average for a combat marine. The really tough ones have even more scars than me. There was a sergeant in my unit named Carlos Martinez who had been shot, stabbed, burned, poisoned, and blown up more times than anyone could count. Lost his left eye on his 3rd tour. Lost his right hand on his 5th. Got artificial replacements and went right back to fighting. Last I heard, he was training new recruits and terrifying them with stories about the old days." The room was completely silent. The Valentorians looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. The idea that humans would take their wounded soldiers, repair them with machines, and send them back into battle was something that went against everything they believed about warfare and honor. "Princess," Kira made a decision. She did not know if it was the right one, but she knew she needed to understand more. "Clear the room," she commanded. "Everyone except the prisoner. I wish to speak with him alone." The advisors protested. The guards hesitated. But the princess's word was law, and slowly, reluctantly, they all filed out of the throne room. The great doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder, and then it was just the two of them. The alien princess and the scarred human, standing in the middle of a room built for thousands. "Now," Kira said quietly, "tell me the truth about your species. Tell me why you fight. Tell me why you refuse to die." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat down on the cold floor, crossing his legs and resting his bound hands in his lap. "Get comfortable," he said. "This is going to take a while." Princess Kira did something she had never done in her 300 years of life. She sat down on the floor across from a prisoner. Her long robes pooled around her like blue water, and her silver skin caught the light as she settled into place. Daniel watched her with mild surprise. He had not expected the princess to actually listen. He had expected threats, torture, or execution. But she seemed genuinely curious, and in his experience, curiosity was always better than cruelty. "Start from the beginning," Kira said. "Tell me about your world." Daniel thought for a moment, organizing his thoughts. Earth is what scientists call a Class 4 death world. That means it is more dangerous than 96% of all habitable planets in the galaxy. Most species that evolve on death worlds either die out quickly or become extremely tough. Humans are still here, so I guess we are the second type. What makes your world so dangerous? "Everything," Daniel said simply. "The weather can kill you. We have storms that form over the oceans and grow into massive spinning walls of wind and water. They can destroy entire cities in a single night. We have earthquakes that split the ground open without warning. We have mountains that explode with liquid rock hot enough to melt steel. Kira listened with growing disbelief. Her own homeworld was stable and calm, with predictable seasons and gentle weather. The idea of a planet that actively tried to kill its inhabitants was hard to imagine. That is just the geology, Daniel continued. The animals are worse. Earth has predators with teeth, as long as your hand, and claws that can slice through bone. We have snakes that carry enough poison to kill a dozen humans with a single bite. We have fish that can smell blood from miles away and will eat anything that moves. We even have insects that carry diseases capable of killing millions. And your species survived all of this. We did more than survive. We conquered it. Humans learned to build shelters against the storms. We learned to predict earthquakes and avoid volcanoes. We hunted the predators until they feared us more than we feared them. We developed medicines to fight the diseases and weapons to kill anything that threatened us. Daniel's voice carried a note of pride. Every challenge made us stronger. Every enemy taught us new ways to fight. By the time we looked up at the stars and started wondering what was out there, we had already been through millions of years of warfare against our own planet. Kira was beginning to understand something. The scars on this human's body were not just marks of violence. They were proof of a species that had been forged in fire. Every wound represented a battle won, a lesson learned, a refusal to surrender. "Tell me about your history," she said. "Tell me about your wars." Daniel laughed softly. "How much time do you have? Humans have been fighting each other since before we had written language. We fought over food, over land, over beliefs. We built great empires and then tore them down. We invented weapons that could kill one person at a time, then weapons that could kill thousands, then weapons that could kill everyone on the planet all at once. You created weapons that could destroy your own world?" "Several times," Daniel admitted. "There was a period in our history when two great nations pointed enough nuclear missiles at each other to end all life on Earth for about 50 years. The survival of our entire species depended on a handful of leaders choosing not to press a button." Kira stared at him. "That is insane. Why would you create such weapons? Why would you risk everything?" "Because our enemies created them too. And we decided it was better to have the power and not use it than to be defenseless against someone who did." Daniel shrugged. "It sounds crazy, I know, but it worked. We never used those weapons in a real war. The fear of total destruction kept everyone in check. Your species is either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Daniel agreed. "But we are still here. And most of the civilizations that tried to destroy us are not." He told her more stories after that. He told her about diseases that had killed half the population of entire continents, and how humans had learned to create vaccines and medicines to fight back. He told her about famines that should have ended entire nations, and how humans had developed new ways to grow food and share resources. He told her about natural disasters that had leveled cities, and how humans had rebuilt them bigger and stronger than before. With each story, Kira's understanding of humanity deepened. These creatures were not weak. They were the opposite of weak. They were survivors in the truest sense of the word. They had faced extinction again and again and had refused to accept it every single time. "There is something I do not understand," Kira said after several hours of conversation. "If your species has suffered so much, why do you continue? Why not simply accept defeat and end the struggle?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Have you ever watched a human child learn to walk?" Kira shook her head. She had never seen a human child. They fall down constantly, over and over again, dozens of times a day. They hit their heads, scrape their knees, cry from frustration and pain. Any reasonable creature would give up. But human children keep trying. They keep standing up. They keep taking steps until eventually they learn to walk. He looked at his scarred hands. That is what humans are. We are creatures that fall down and get back up. We fail and try again. We lose and refuse to accept losing. It is not courage. It is not bravery. It is just who we are. We do not know how to give up. It is not in our nature. Kira thought about her own people. Valenthorians lived for hundreds of years. Their technology was advanced, their bodies were perfect, and they had not faced a serious threat to their existence in millennia. They had become comfortable, safe, stagnant. And now, looking at this scarred human with his broken nose and his damaged body, she wondered if comfort was actually a kind of weakness. Your scars, she said slowly. They are not just memories. They are armor. Daniel smiled for the first time since his capture. It changed his face, making him look younger and almost friendly despite all the damage. I never thought of it that way. But yes, I suppose they are. Every wound I have survived makes me less afraid of the next one. Every time I should have died and did not, I become more certain that I can survive anything. That is dangerous thinking, Kira warned. Confidence like that can get you killed. Eventually, yes. Every human dies. We live for maybe 80 or 90 years if we are lucky. That seems very short to someone like you, I know. But we pack a lot of living into those years. And most of us prefer a short life full of action to a long life full of nothing. The princess stood up and walked to the great windows that looked out into space. Stars glittered in the darkness, millions of them. Each one possibly home to a different species with different values and different ideas about what made life worth living. My advisors want me to execute you, she said without turning around. They say you are too dangerous to keep alive. They say that if you escaped, you would find a way to hurt us. They say that your scars prove you are a killer who cannot be controlled. Your advisors are smart, Daniel said. Kira turned to face him. They are also afraid. I saw it in their eyes when they looked at you. For the first time in centuries, they are looking at something they do not understand. Something they cannot predict or control. She walked back toward him and stood looking down at his seated form. I am not going to execute you, Commander Hayes. Daniel raised an eyebrow. No. I'm going to return you to your people. And I am going to ask for a meeting with your leaders. Why? Princess Kira smiled, and for once, it reached her purple eyes. Because my empire has been at peace for too long. We have forgotten what it means to struggle. We have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. And I think perhaps your species has something to teach us. She reached down and touched one of the scars on his shoulder. Her silver fingers were cool against his skin. You carry your history on your body, she said quietly. Every battle, every loss, every victory. You never forget, and you never stop learning. My people forget too easily. We heal too quickly. We need all eyes who remember. Daniel looked up at the alien princess who had captured him, stripped him, and examined him like an interesting specimen. And he realized that she was not his enemy after all. She was something much more complicated. I will need my armor back, he said. Kira laughed. It was a real laugh this time, warm and surprised. You will get it back, along with your weapons and a ship to take you home. And what do I tell my commanders? Tell them that Princess Kira of the Valenthorian Empire wishes to discuss an alliance. Tell them that we have enemies gathering at our borders, and we need friends who know how to fight. She offered him her hand to help him stand. After a moment, he took it. Tell them, she said, that we finally understand why humans refuse to die. 3 weeks had passed since Princess Kira released Commander Daniel Hayes. He had returned to human space in a Valentorian shuttle, carrying a message that shocked everyone who heard it. The enemy wanted to talk. The aliens who had been fighting humanity for decades were asking for peace. The Human Federation did not know what to make of it. Some leaders thought it was a trap. Others thought it was a sign of weakness. But Daniel told them what he had seen on that ship, what he had shown the princess, and what she had said in response. And slowly, carefully, they agreed to meet. The meeting place was a space station in neutral territory. It had been abandoned for centuries, left over from some ancient civilization that had disappeared long ago. Human engineers spent 2 weeks making it safe and functional. Valentorian technicians added their own modifications. By the time the delegations arrived, it was a strange mix of both cultures. Princess Kira came with a small group of advisors and guards. She wore formal robes of deep purple and gold, and her silver skin seemed to glow in the artificial light of the station. She looked calm and confident, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders. This meeting was a risk for her too. If it went badly, her own people might turn against her. The human delegation was led by Admiral Patricia Cole, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in 3 major wars and negotiated peace treaties with a dozen species. If anyone could make this work, it was her. Daniel was there too, standing behind the Admiral in his dress uniform. His scars were hidden under the fabric, but Kira knew they were there. She gave him a small nod when she entered the room. He returned it. The first few hours were formal and tense. Diplomats from both sides talked in careful circles, saying a lot of words without really communicating anything important. Daniel watched Kira grow more and more frustrated. She was not a politician. She was a princess who had seen something that changed her mind, and she wanted the humans to understand. Finally, during a break in the negotiations, Kira asked to speak with Daniel alone. The advisors on both sides protested, but the Admiral gave permission. Something in her eyes suggested she understood what the princess was trying to do. They walked together through the empty corridors of the ancient station. The walls were made of some strange metal that still gleamed after thousands of years. Windows looked out at the stars, and Daniel could see both the human and Valentorian ships floating in formation nearby. "Your diplomats are very careful with their words," Kira said. "They have to be. One wrong phrase could start a war." "I know, but we are wasting time. My empire faces threats that will not wait for careful words." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "I brought something to show your leaders. Something that will make them understand why I am really here." She pulled a small device from her robes and activated it. A holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed a map of the galaxy, with the Valentorian Empire marked in blue and human space marked in green. But there were other colors too. Red zones spreading from the far edges of the map, moving slowly inward like blood seeping through water. "The Drachian Confederacy," Kira said, pointing to the largest red area. "They have been expanding for centuries. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They simply destroy everything in their path and move on." She pointed to another red zone. "The Hive Collective. Billions of creatures that share a single mind. They consume entire planets and use the resources to make more of themselves. They are endless and patient and inevitable." Daniel studied the map with growing concern. The red zones were not close to human space yet, but they were getting closer. In a few decades, maybe less, they would reach the borders. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. "Because my people cannot stop them alone. Our empire is old and comfortable and slow. We have not fought a real war in 300 years. We have forgotten how to struggle. We have forgotten how to survive." Kira's voice was heavy with shame. "When I saw your body, Commander Hayes, I saw what humans truly are. You are not weak. You are survivors. Your entire history is one long fight against extinction, and you are still here. She turned off the hologram. The Voluntorian Empire needs allies who know how to fight. We need warriors who carry their scars with pride. We need a species that does not know how to give up. You need us, Daniel said quietly. Yes, we need you. And in return, we can offer technology that will take your civilization centuries to develop on its own. We can share medical knowledge that will cure diseases your doctors have never seen. We can give you access to resources and trade routes that will make your federation stronger than ever before. Daniel thought about everything she was saying. It was a good offer, a generous offer. But there was something else he needed to know. What changed your mind? He asked. Before you captured me, your empire was fighting us. Your soldiers were killing mine. What happened in that throne room that made you want peace instead of war? Kira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. I saw something I did not expect. I saw a creature that should have been broken but was not. I saw wounds that would have destroyed any Voluntorian, but you wore them like medals. And I realized that we have been wrong about humans from the beginning. She took a step closer to him. My people heal perfectly. We live for centuries. We have technology that can fix any damage and extend any life. We thought that made us superior. We thought species that suffered and died young were primitive and weak. Our purple eyes met his green ones. But you showed me the truth. Suffering is not weakness. Scars are not failure. The things that hurt us can also make us stronger if we choose to let them. Humans understood that long before my people existed. You have been learning that lesson for millions of years. Daniel did not know what to say. He had been a soldier for most of his life. He had killed enemies, watched friends die, and carried pain that never really went away. He had never thought of any of it as wisdom. He had just called it survival. There is something else, Kira said hesitantly. Something personal. What? When I touched your scars in the throne room, I felt something strange. Something I have never felt before. She looked away, suddenly seeming almost shy. My people do not know physical imperfection. We do not understand what it means to be damaged and continue living. But when I touched you, I felt connected to something real, something true. Daniel understood what she was trying to say. In her perfect, flawless world, his scars were the most honest thing she had ever seen. They could not be faked or hidden or healed away. They were proof of everything he had survived. The diplomats will take forever to work out the details, Daniel said after a moment. But I can tell you what my answer would be if anyone asked me. What would you say? I would say yes. I would say that humans have always fought alone because we had to, but we would rather have friends. I would say that the universe is big and dark and full of things that want to kill us, and the smart move is to stand together instead of standing alone. He held out his scarred hand. I would say that Princess Kira of the Voluntorian Empire is the first alien who ever looked at me and saw something worth respecting. And that matters more than any treaty. Kira looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she took it in her own silver fingers and held it tightly. Then let us go back to the diplomats, she said, and tell them what we have decided. They walked back together through the ancient corridors, past windows that showed the stars of a galaxy filled with danger and possibility. Behind them, their peoples waited nervously, unsure of what was happening. But Daniel and Kira knew. They knew that something had changed in that throne room 3 weeks ago. Something that could not be measured in treaties or trade agreements. Two species had looked at each other and decided to stop being enemies. It was only the first step. There would be more negotiations, more arguments, more misunderstandings. There would be people on both sides who did not want peace, who preferred the comfort of familiar hatred. But it was a start, and humans were very good at starting things that others thought were impossible. The great council chamber of the Valentorian Empire was filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Nobles, admirals, governors, and ministers sat in rows that curved around a central platform. The room was built to hold thousands, and every seat was taken. Lights floated overhead like captured stars, and the walls displayed live images from 100 different worlds. Princess Kira stood alone on the central platform. She wore her formal armor for the first time in decades, a suit of silver metal that had belonged to her grandmother. It was a symbol of war, and everyone in the room understood what it meant. The princess was not here to discuss trade or politics. She was here to talk about survival. Commander Daniel Hayes stood at the edge of the room with a small group of human diplomats. They had been invited as observers, a gesture of good faith that many in the council opposed. Some of the Valentorians refused to even look at the humans. Others stared with open hostility. But Daniel had faced worse crowds, and he kept his expression calm. Admiral Thren, the oldest member of the council, rose from his seat. He had been alive for over 800 years and had served 6 different emperors. His voice carried the weight of centuries. Princess Kira, you have called this emergency session to propose an alliance with the Human Federation. You claim that our empire faces threats that we cannot defeat alone. Many on this council find your claims difficult to believe. He looked at Daniel with cold eyes. And many find your choice of allies even more difficult to understand. Kira nodded respectfully. Admiral Thren, I appreciate your concerns. They are shared by many in this chamber. But I believe that before we debate the wisdom of this alliance, you should understand what we are truly facing. She activated the holographic display, and the same map she had shown Daniel appeared above the platform. The red zones of the Draxian Confederacy and the Hive Collective spread across the galaxy like wounds. In the past 50 years, the Draxians have consumed 37 inhabited worlds. They have killed over 600 billion sentient beings. Their fleet grows larger with every conquest, and their path is bringing them directly toward our border. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many of them had heard rumors about the Draxians, but seeing the actual numbers was shocking. The Hive Collective has absorbed 18 species in the same period. Entire civilizations erased, their populations converted into mindless drones. Their expansion rate is increasing every decade. Our projections suggest they will reach Valentorian space within the next century. Admiral Thren looked troubled but unconvinced. These threats are real, I admit. But why do we need human help? Our technology is superior. Our ships are faster and stronger. Our soldiers heal from any wound. What can these fragile creatures offer us? Kira smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I asked myself the same question 3 weeks ago, Admiral. Then, the first captured a human marine and ordered him to remove his armor. She pressed a button, and images appeared on the walls around the chamber. Images of Daniel Hayes without his suit, his scarred body on display for everyone to see. The council members reacted with shock and disgust. Some turned away. Others leaned forward with morbid curiosity. This is Commander Daniel Hayes, Kira announced. 22 years of military service. He has been shot, stabbed, burned, and broken more times than he can count. He has watched friends die in his arms and kept fighting. He has faced odds that would make any Valentorian surrender, and he has never given up. She looked around the chamber, and he is average. Among humans, his level of damage is considered normal. There are human soldiers with far worse scars who still serve on the front lines. There are humans who have lost limbs, eyes, and organs who refuse to stop fighting. The room was silent now. The council members stared at the images on the walls, trying to understand what they were seeing. Humans do not heal like we do, Kira continued. They carry their wounds forever. And instead of making them weak, it makes them strong. Every scar is a lesson learned. Every injury is a reminder of what they survived. They do not forget their pain. They use it. She pointed to Daniel, who stood straighter under the attention. That human killed 17 of our elite warriors before we captured him. Not because he was stronger or faster or better equipped. Because he refused to die. Because giving up is simply not something humans do. Admiral Thren spoke again, his voice less certain than before. Even if what you say is true, what difference does it make? Human tenacity cannot stop a Draxian war fleet. Human stubbornness cannot defeat the Hive Collective. No, Kira agreed. But combined with our technology, it can. Think about it, Admiral. We have ships that can travel anywhere in the galaxy. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have medical technology that can repair almost any injury. What we do not have is the will to use them. She stepped closer to the council. How long has it been since Valantor faced a real threat? 300 years? 400? We have become comfortable, safe, slow. We have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. We have lost the instinct that kept our ancestors alive when the universe was young and dangerous. Our voice rose. Humans have never lost that instinct. They have been fighting for their lives since the first one crawled out of the ocean. They have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed billions. They have built civilizations from nothing and rebuilt them after disasters that would have ended any other species. Kira turned to face Daniel directly. Commander Hayes, would you join me on the platform? Daniel walked through the crowd of Valanthorians, aware of every eye watching him. He climbed the steps and stood beside the princess, his scarred face visible to everyone in the chamber. Show them, Kira said quietly. Daniel understood. He removed his dress jacket and the shirt beneath it, revealing his torso to the assembled council. The scars were stark under the bright lights, a map of violence and survival written on his skin. This is what humans are, Kira said. This is what they have always been. Not weak, not fragile, unbreakable. They bend but do not shatter. They fall but always rise. They lose but never surrender. She turned back to the council. I am proposing an alliance because I believe it is our only chance to survive what is coming. Human soldiers fighting alongside Valanthorian technology. Human determination combined with our resources. Human stubbornness backed by our power. Admiral Thren was quiet for a long time. Then he asked a simple question. Commander Hayes, why would you people agree to this? We have been enemies for decades. We have killed your soldiers, and you have killed ours. Why would humans fight beside us? Daniel put his shirt back on before answering. Because humans do not hold grudges when survival is at stake. We have fought each other for thousands of years, but when a bigger threat appears, we always unite. It is what we do. He looked around the chamber at the ancient faces watching him. The Draxians in the Hive do not care if you are Valanthorian or human. They will kill us both without hesitation. The only question is whether we die fighting alone or survive fighting together. The vote took 3 hours. There were speeches and arguments and accusations. Some council members stormed out in protest. Others demanded impossible conditions. But in the end, the mathematics of survival won. The Valanthorian Empire agreed to the alliance by a margin of 62%. That night, Princess Kira and Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the observation deck of the council building, looking out at the stars. Below them, diplomats were already working on the details of the treaty. Above them, the first human ships were being granted permission to enter Valanthorian space. You changed their minds, Kira said. When they saw your scars, they understood what I was trying to tell them. The scars helped, Daniel agreed. But you were the one who convinced them. You showed them something they had never considered before. That weakness and strength are not what they thought. Kira turned to look at him. Do you think we can win? Against the Draxians and the Hive and whatever else is out there. Daniel thought about all the battles he had fought, all the friends he had lost, all the times he had been certain he was going to die and had somehow survived anyway. I do not know if we can win, he said honestly, but I know we will not go down without a fight. And sometimes that is enough. Sometimes just refusing to lose is its own kind of victory. The princess reached out and touched the scar on his cheek, tracing the line from his eye to his jaw. Her fingers were cool and gentle. Thank you, she said, for showing me what humans truly are. Daniel covered her hand with his own, pressing her palm against his damaged skin. Thank you, he replied, for being willing to see. They stood together as the stars turned overhead, two species joined by an unlikely bond. Behind them, a new chapter of galactic history was beginning to be written. It would be filled with war and loss and terrible sacrifice. It would demand everything that both humans and Valentorians had to give. Many would fall, and many scars would be earned. But they would face it together, and in the end, that was the most human thing of all.